And here we go. We are drafting coaches here on our Friday roundtable. We're going to get right to it. Our draft order as determined by lottery before we came on the show here. It was really exciting. We should have put it on the pod. But I'll pick number 1. Doug will pick number 2. Ellis 3rd. Scott 4th. Mary Kay 5th. Let's get right to it then. I'll go first. Number 1 overall. I'm just really, I want to know what you guys think, if there's any sort of debate over this or not. I guess our standard is, Doug, you sort of explained this best. It's who you would hire right now, correct?
Yeah, if you had a team, I was thinking like you're not like a good team and you're trying to win now, but it's maybe not just for 1 year, but you're playing football, right? It's who you'd hire if you had all the guys.
All right, well, I'm going to take the obvious one here. I'm just going to take Bill Belichick. I still think, even with the 7-9 season last year, I still think he's the standard as a head coach. I think we have to separate a little bit Belichick, the personnel guy, Belichick, the coach. I think he's still a really good coach. The personnel side of it has not been as good, and that's why they had to pay all that money this offseason to kind of make up for some mistakes in the draft that he has made over the last few years. But I still think Bill is the guy. If I'm trying to win, if I've got a good team, 68 years old, I'm still going to take Bill in this spot at number 1.
I don't think I'm picking the obvious guy here. I'm not sure there is one obvious person, but I am not going only by Super Bowls. I'm not going by necessarily my list of the greatest coaches ever. This is the guy that I would want now because he has been incredibly successful. And one thing that I found difficult that I tried to think about is how much are there coaches, because there are several of them whose great success is really tied to one quarterback. And that mattered to me. So I picked a guy who I feel like his success is not tied to only one quarterback. In fact, he has made a 180 transition and he has kept winning. I think he's a great overall franchise coach. I think he relates to players. I think he's smart. He's the face of the franchise that I would want. And he's in the AFC North. And I'm taking John Harbaugh at number 2.
I had him first. He was the top ranked coach on my list, and I think it's an excellent choice.
I'm taking Andy Reid. 3 Super Bowl appearances with 2 different teams over the course of 20 years. His 2004 Eagles appearance with Don McNabb, of course, and then 2 back-to-back with Patrick Mahomes. Another guy like Harbaugh, though, Andy is, of course, much more almost all in offensively, a play designer, a schemer, a chalkboard, whiteboard, and now probably smart tablet type of guy drawing up these plays. But when it comes to Andy, and it's going to be a theme amongst these top coaches in this tier, and for a few of these young guys we'll get to, it's their adaptability.
All right, so I had Harbaugh, Reid, and Belichick as my top 3. And what I did is I kind of mashed up rankings done by Edge Sports, which some people on the pod here might be familiar with it. They provide info for football insiders. They actually do coach rankings. They assign a coach of the year, and they basically use win probability to measure your coaching decisions. And then they rank based on that. They also factor in like critical calls, like 4th down and when you decided to punt and how that factored into win probability, all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of using that as a guide. And Harbaugh, Reid, and Belichick rank high on these. And really, I looked at those 3 as like apart from everybody else. And listening to everybody else make their picks, people are talking about all these different things these guys have done over their career, right? How Reid has won with different people and how Belichick has done all these different things. And Harbaugh, there's experience and a career there. So like, where does Kevin Stefanski fit into that? He's only done this for 1 year. And if we're just talking about having some sort of longevity, then again, where does Kevin Stefanski fit in that? Because he has less experience than the overwhelming majority of the people we're going to be ranking. So I'm going to take Kevin Stefanski 4th. Where do you find the weakness based on last season?
So Scott makes a really great point here, and one that I wrestled with. And I would not have taken Kevin Stefanski this high. There are a couple other guys who don't have long resumes, but have slightly longer resumes I would have taken ahead of him.
I had Stefanski 7th, which I thought was pretty high. But I had him 2nd among what I would call like the young coaches in the league, that if you almost did like best veteran coach, best young coach. This is Scott also staking the claim at, okay, well, if you want to make a resume argument, but best young coach in the NFL. I'm curious if everybody like agrees with that, because there's one guy that I have ahead of Stefanski in that way.
For me, it's too high. I had Kevin Stefanski down in the next tier, somewhere around 10 or 11, depending on how things fell. And one of the reasons is because, first of all, I need to see more. Like, give me another couple of seasons before I can say, you're up there at number 4. There's a hell of a lot of really amazing football coaches in the NFL. So
well, then again, we're just ranking people by experience.
No, I don't think you can say that and just be dismissive of
No.
There's a guy that I have ahead of Stefanski that if he had only coached 1 year, I also would have him ahead of Stefanski.
So
you know what I mean? It's not just because he's old, it's because he's really good and old.
So here's the other thing that I think. Kevin Stefanski obviously did a phenomenal job this year, but I've said this before, and I think this is important. How many first-year head coaches get to take over a roster that is absolutely 100 times expected to make the playoffs, full of Pro Bowlers, full of first-round picks, an offensive line that anybody would die to have? Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. So he had a lot to work with, and he did a great job with it under trying circumstances. But I just would need to see a little bit more, maybe a year where you have some adversity, where, maybe things don't go exactly the way that you want, or you have to build a team, or you have to try to win with less than stellar talent all over the place. So I think that's one of the reasons why I am more in wait and see mode with him.